Paul George, please.
What can the government do about the housing market when average wages have decreased while house prices continue to rise?
And this is something that does affect a younger generation who can't get onto the housing ladder, effectively. Average wages decreasing, house prices going up. Jeremy Hunt.
Well, I do think if you look at how the world has changed when I left university to now, one of the biggest challenges is that it is so much harder to buy a house. And I think that there are other things that have got better for young people. The technology revolution has made huge strides, but this is a really difficult thing because everyone wants to own a house, and rightly so. And there are some big challenges if we're going to get this right. What can we do? Well, first of all, we need to get new housing starts going again. They have now finally got back to their 2008 levels, but it has been a real struggle through the recession. We also need to look at the planning laws. And my party, the government, made some very controversial changes to the planning laws to try and make sure that we do start building houses. Because I think the biggest betrayal of young people would be actually if we said, well, we've got our houses now and we're not going to do what it takes to help young people get a foot on the housing ladder. But the third thing we can do is access to finance. And that's why the Help to Buy scheme, I think, has been really significant. It's now helping 75 people every day, 75 families get their home. It is true that it's still a real struggle, and I don't want to underestimate that, but I think we have to do everything we can because it's something that hasn't changed between the generations, that basic desire to build a house, to own a house, and I think every government has a responsibility to do what it can to help people take that step.
The man at the very back there.
I think a big part of the actual problem here is the Labour government of the 90s, who set a specific target of sending nearly 50% of young people into higher education. The reality is now is that these young people, these people in this room, cannot afford to buy a house because they're coming out of university, there's not the graduate jobs there that they need, and they're having to take jobs on a much lower level, on a much less pay, in order to be able to survive. So they are not able to save up the money to buy a house. And that's something, Sadiq, your government's got, your previous government has to answer for.
Sadiq?
Let me address that. Look. So when the older members of the audience went to university, those that did, roughly speaking, 7% of that age group went to university. I'm very proud that we wanted to have almost 50% go into university. All four of us have benefited from
that target, though, did you?
All four of us have benefited from a university education.
I didn't.
The crisis in the housing market.
Ollie didn't.
I didn't.
Besides Ollie.
You too.
The crisis,
I'm just chairman.
The crisis is not caused by too many people going to university. The crisis is caused by not enough houses being built. Jeremy's criticised my figures. I'll give him another one. Last year, there were as many housing completes as in the 1920s. We're building fewer houses than any time in the last 70, 80 years. We need to build more houses.
All right.
It's as short as that.
All right, let's hear from the gentleman there on the older side. You, sir. Yes.
There's a paradox, isn't there, that there's a shortage of land, and yet there's property developers sort of holding on to land for years and years, waiting to maximise the prices.
Yeah.
And there should be legislation that makes them sort of start building houses within 12 months of buying the land.
Do you own a house yourself?
Yes.
And presumably it's gone up in value?
Yes.
You have children, grandchildren who are trying to get on the housing ladder? Any hope for them?
Well, my children have got on the housing ladder.
They have. How old are they?
40... Oh, good question. 40... 40
I know the feeling.
Yeah, 44, 42, 30...
So they're not here
35.
on this side of the audience?
Oh, no, no.
The woman there in the third row, and then I go to the man behind you. Yes.
I just find it a bit confusing that we're talking about the need to build more houses when there's currently loads of three-bedroom houses empty because of people affected by the bedroom tax. There's nobody that can move into them because they can't afford them.
All right. And the man behind. You, sir, behind.
My point is that at the moment there's the Help to Buy scheme, as in it's a bit scary because as in you're giving more people, well, people can't afford a house, more income. At the end of the day, the economy is not stable and jobs are not certain. So it doesn't make sense. Why would you give more people access to more money when the economy is not stable to a point where then at least the income is actually stable enough to pay the mortgage.
Ollie Grandin.
Well, first of all, on the Help to Buy scheme, there are much more kind of checks and balances than there used to be. There used to be hundreds and hundreds of schemes that would lend money at 93% of the value of the house. And now it's just something like 43 products, as I understand it. If I can just come back to you on the issue of the single-room subsidy, because I know that what happened in Manchester is that a whole load of, kind of single-bedroom homes were bulldozed that could have been used, and also a lot of people in Manchester have been, as I understand it, evicted as tenants. At the same time that there is money available to Manchester to pay to tenants to keep them in those tenancies, unlike Stockport, which is Lib Dem controlled, where no tenants have been evicted under this kind of system. So first of all, on that, there is central government funding of 180 million that can help people through this. But if I can just say about the housing thing, which is that I was really interested to see that Ed Balls today was admitting that Labour kind of screwed up on this. When I was working at Shelter and trying to lobby the government, the Labour government then, to build more houses, it was just, we just got nowhere. And it's good to hear now that Ed Balls finally admits that housing was a big failure by the Labour government, because I think it was. We are now building and have finally managed to start building more affordable homes. And finally, for the first time, we're getting more social housing after it was sold off by successive Labour and Tory governments.
Sadiq Khan, briefly.
Well, look, I mean, I'm not sure where you live, Ollie, but that's not my experience. Look, there's
what about what Ed Balls said?
Ollie,
is that your experience? Did he say that?
We didn't.
Yes, he did say that today at the National Housing Federation.
Well, for those who didn't hear him, let me repeat it. We should have built more houses when we were in government.
Yeah,
but our priority, Ollie, was we were being rightfully lobbied by Shelter
when the sun was shining,
to improve the quality of the social housing that was appalling. We had to bring those appalling council properties and social housing up to decent standards, and I'm not embarrassed of doing that. Now, we should have built more housing, but we didn't. But we need to sort that out. And actually, you know what? If we build more housing, it means more builders getting into work. They'll be paying national insurance. They'll be paying tax. And we've got to have a law that says to those who are land banking, you use it or you lose it. And we say to the property developers who are hoarding these land that unless you use the planning permission you've got to build these housing, we're going to take the land away from you and build the housing ourselves.
All right. Yeah, you sit over there. Gentleman in the blue, pull over, yes.
You mentioned earlier, David, that you're getting to the stage where people in their 30s are only able to get onto the housing ladder for the first time. I was 30 when I got onto the housing ladder at the first time, and I entered the housing market with a mortgage rate of 15%. And the reason why I did that, and a lot of others did too, was one simple fact of mobility. We were willing to go where the job markets was. I was brought up in the northeast, and I had to move to London to get a job in order to get onto the housing market. I don't see too much of that mobility in the marketplace at the moment.
What, are you saying young people won't move?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm saying they won't.
Sorry, who wants to pick up that point?
Sheffield.
Go on then.
It hurts to be on this side of the Pennines, but I came here for a job. We move around all the time. We move to go to university. If where we go to university there isn't the jobs, we have to go to another city. We move around. You don't necessarily see it, but we do it.
Okay. Yes.
Surely basic economics tells us when demand outstrips supply, then price goes up. Jeremy's already told us that they're not building enough houses. At the same time, they're making it easier for people to get mortgages. Prices go up.
What do you think the effect will be on this generation who can't get on the housing ladder to, what do you say, 38?
38 in London.
38. What do you think
Maybe
the effect will
adopt
be?
a more European approach, and I believe in Germany more people rent than own.
Yeah.
Willy-nilly. Yes, you, sir, yes, there. You.
Isn't it just going to turn into a system where we're making, like Germany, we're going to end up renting and the richer are going to get richer, we're putting more money in the pockets because we can't afford to get on the housing market ourselves?
Do you have any aspiration?
Yeah, I'm
or
looking to
hope
buy myself, but unfortunately I can't afford to get onto the market at the moment, so I'm going to be forced to rent.
And the woman here on the right, if we can get the microphone to there. Sorry, yes.
I don't understand where the space for these houses is going to be. We've currently got an immigration problem. We've got a lack of jobs. You're asking people and lending money to people, which now seems it's just like a statistics games for the government to make themselves look better. And eventually it will crash because the housing prices will go down.
Housing prices will go down?
Because there's more houses, the equity of the houses will depreciate, meaning it will crash eventually again. So I've got no intention of even wanting to get into that.
You don't want to get on the market, on the thing at all?
Well, we've got two very different views on that. And I think the answer is that we need a bit of both. We need to increase supply, but we also need to make sure that people can actually afford it when you do increase supply. And we need to be brave and accept that we're going to have to do that throughout the country. And I actually think it's perfectly possible to increase supply and also protect beautiful countryside. And I think there are lots of places, actually, where we could be a lot more imaginative. The NHS is one example. The NHS is actually sitting on a lot of land, which we could be much quicker at disposing of, and some of that could be appropriate for housing. But I do think that at the heart of this is actually a responsibility for those of us who actually did manage to get onto the housing ladder when houses were a lot cheaper, to actually think about doing what it takes for people who are much younger, who have the same dreams and aspirations we have. And actually, I think it doesn't work and it's not acceptable to sort of sit tight. And I think we have to say, well, what are we going to do? And I think tackling this from all directions is the only way to do that, because I want to look my children in the eye and say I did what it took to help you to enjoy the same ambitions and aspirations that I had as well.
All right, let's hear from one or two people on that side. You, sir, in the yes.
There are 13,500 houses which have permission to build in Salford, but nobody's building, and this number is going up by about 2,000 a year. Permission is being given, but none of the builders are building. So what's the government going to do about it?
And why do you think the builders aren't building? Waiting for the price to rise even higher?
Waiting for the price, yes.
So what can the government do about it?
Well, I think that's where things like the Help to Buy scheme make a difference, because people then begin to think that young people can access the finance to buy these houses, and then they're confident that they can build them and make a profit.
You can't force people to build. So
you can lapse their planning permission. You can lapse their planning permission.
Yeah, but what's that going to do? If they don't think it's profitable to build in Salford, they won't build.
They think it is, but they're waiting for the right time.
There's two things. One is people land banking, so banking in the land, so the value goes up over a period of time. Secondly, is them having the confidence in the economy and not wanting to invest in bricks and mortar. And we've got to use whatever levers we've got to try and persuade them and cajole them. Ollie's right. After a period of time, their permission you could revoke after 5 years. Well, actually, I'm saying let's go further. Let's say to them, let's just start building. You're going to on that land. We're going to take away the permission you have, and we can do it, and we should do it, and that'll persuade them, cajole them, force them to start building houses.
Right. OK, I think we'll go on to another question.